What's up, listeners and supporters of the Ain't Hard to Tell podcast? We need some help from you, and it won't take up too much of your time. As we grow, we always want to hear your feedback, so take a minute or two to fill out a short anonymous survey. The survey link is right in the episode notes for this podcast. It's easy and takes less than 5 minutes. As always, we thank you for your continued support. Hard to Tell podcast, episode 191. Dexter Henry, Brian Fonseca here.
Jesus.
Yeah, 191. That means we're getting old together in this. That's what's going on. We're getting old together. You know, before you give me some story about how, well, this happened when I was in middle school and I was in college, and makes me feel old. So
Look, I'm just going to say on the front end, we are open for business. So as we approach 200 episodes, like
we're open for
we're,
business. I like
we're
that.
here. And then I'm going to reiterate what I said last time. You might be hearing from us a lot, especially me in the fall pretty soon. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens.
might be some things. But one of the best things about doing this podcast is we get to have a lot of fantastic guests, people that we've worked with in the sports journalism industry. But one of the things is like when guests come back, it's great when guests come back. But you know what? It's great when guests come back and they have leveled up. They're in a different place than the last time we saw them. And our guest today is, I would say, my favorite feature writer in terms of sports. Mirin Fader joins us this time on the Ain't Hard to Tell podcast. Mirin, good to see you again. Second time I got to see you in a week, which is more than I've seen you in the past year. How are you doing? And this time, Mirin, we'll get to how you're doing. But I want to let the people know, the last time you saw Mirin, she was working for a different outlet. She was still doing feature writing, but this time she's a published author of Giannis, the Improbable Rise of an NBA MVP. Mirin Fader. Mirin, how are you doing?
Wow, that was such a great intro. It's so good to see you guys. I'm good. I'm excited. I'm, dealing with this release. I can't believe it. It's kind of surreal. You work on something for so long and then it's just out. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's got to be. So Mirin's book, for everybody who does not know, and you can catch, I spoke with her before the book dropped on the NBA Exchange. She was kind enough to join me on that. And she was in a different place then. And then the book dropped and it's available to everyone. Came out on Tuesday. Mirin, what has it been like since the book dropped? Right? Because I know things had to have changed. It was pre-book, before Giannis book, and now it's after Giannis book. What has it been like since the book dropped for you?
Yeah, it's been just crazy. They ran an excerpt in the New York Times and Washington Post, which like made my parents cry, which was really nice to hear that they're proud of me. It's just crazy, and people just posting photos of their books. Like this one guy, like here from the Philippines, and holding up the book, and just like really touches my heart. It's just been so crazy, but I'm also like exhausted. I've just been doing like a month-long podcast tour thing just because the Bucks were in the playoffs and the book was so timely. So yeah, it's been such a whirlwind. I feel so grateful.
Are you like over doing these podcasts and talking to people about the book? I know you're not annoyed of us because we're so great, but are you annoyed at this at all?
I'm not annoyed. You guys are amazing. No, it's a privilege. There's a lot of people that are like, man, I wish I could go on said podcast. And so I know that I'm just like very, very lucky. I just need to come up with fresh anecdotes for these podcasts. I feel like I'm just saying the same thing. I have to get better. I need to improve. I need a nap. But no, it's a really cool experience. Like I said, I just can't believe it. I really didn't think this day would like ever happen.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's interesting for me too, and I know Brian has stuff to think because both you guys being
I
friends,
have a
and
lot to say.
both of you this year publishing books and it coming out. So for one, I want to say as a friend to just see that has been dope. You know what I mean? Anytime your friends write something and you see it published, I know it feels good. Is there any difference in the feeling for you now that you are a published author? Like Brian, you could chime in on this too because you now have published author next to your name too. Any difference in feelings for you guys with this?
You go first, Brian. Tell them
you're
what the
so
title of your book is.
So- well, look, it won't nearly be as successful because it's a slow burn with fiction. But yeah,
Heavy eye roll.
I mean it's true
Heavy
though.
eye roll. Heavy.
But Hidalgo Heist Victims Taking Up Space
There
out
you
in stores
go.
now
There
There
on
you
you go.
Amazon.
go. There you
But
go.
yeah, I mean, look, and this is something I wanted to get into with Mirin here because we've texted about this like throughout the year at various different points, redundant. Um, she did 222, right, Mirin? 222 interviews for that.
221.
220,
221.
What
whatever.
are we
Yeah.
talking?
I just gave you the extra one. So and
Thank
reached
you.
out to a whole bunch of different people. Like it's a different kind of process where you're reaching out to all these people. There's a lot of anxiety that goes into that, I would imagine, Mirren.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
which, obviously I want you to speak to. And then from my end, it's just like coming up with all the shit because it's fictional. But then the anxiety that comes with wanting it to be realistic, getting things right, getting things appropriate. Um, and when you're self-publishing, there's a special set of circumstances that come with that in terms of like you don't have uh a substantial amount of help because you're doing it yourself. So then there's the anxiousness that comes with that. And Miriam could speak to this as well, just doing all of this in a pandemic. And
Right.
that being something that is sort of lingering around all of this because I would imagine that of those 200 something interviews, not a lot of them were in person, if any of them, right? So
Right.
there's that element as well. But yeah, I mean there are some differences there, but similar levels of stress, I will say, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the anxiety is just so real. It's like you're so nervous, like, am I doing it right? Am I, it's a new experience. I've been a long form writer for a long time and, I'm using the same skills, but it's like same language, different dialect, and those differences, like, really, it was kind of like learning on the fly. And like, yeah, the pandemic was just really hard. I was really isolated. Just I live alone, and so it's just a lot of like me time and just waking up super early and interviewing somebody at like 6 a.m. our time in Los Angeles, and because in Greece it would be nighttime there, and so it was just a lot of hustling. But you're right, like books. It's just a different level of anxiety, like if you make a mistake on an online article, they can change it in like 2 seconds. It just kind of like doesn't work like that with a published book. And so there's something about it that just feels more official. And, to state the obvious, we're going from one long form story, which is 4,000 words, to 120,000 words, 15 chapters. So a book is essentially 15 long forms. So it was just hard to essentially like not write 15 disparate stories, but like find a way to connect all of these into one thing that feels like you're going to a place, and then it has to grab your attention. You don't want somebody to give up on page 100.
Right.
Mm.
Nobody wants that to happen. You want them to
Please
keep
don't give
turning
up.
the pages.
Please don't
Yeah,
give up on
well,
me.
yeah. I mean, well, that's the thing too. Like, one
Stick with
really.
me.
Yeah, and releasing it during the summer. It's like, you know,
Right.
what are people's habits at this point? And, again, during a pandemic, releasing a book in the summer where it's like now everybody wants to go back outside. We'll see what happens in the fall in terms of like, how that'll affect things, but there's that element as well. One of the other things I wanted to ask was just like, getting to be an author at this point, was this something that you thought would come later on, or did this come right on time, or did you think that you would get to this point sooner? Like, what was sort of the timeline that you envisioned in terms of getting to this point?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, people make fun of me for my stupid timeline, but I was definitely one of those people with ridiculous expectations of like by 30, I need to do this, that, and the third. And
Word.
right? I know it's toxic. I am not I am not endorsing this. It's toxic, it's bad. But I was one of those people, and I was like, I want to do this before I'm 30. And when I pitched the book, I was 28. So, I just turned 30. And so it did happen, but honestly, it happened not because I was at this age, but it happened because it organically came from a story. I had been trying to come up with, random ideas and stuff, just like, oh, should I write a book on this person or that person? And it just never worked. But then when I just was focused on the work that I was doing and did this BR story on Alex and Giannis, it was just a natural progression, and the timing was right, and it felt right. And even though I think most people do their books obviously much later in life, I don't know, I was just super lucky.
Yeah, I was wanted to ask about that too, in terms of you told me a little bit before about how it came about, but it came from the Bleacher Report story that you did on Giannis. But when did you feel or had that inspiration to be like, okay, this can actually be something more, right? Because it's one thing to have a great story and a great idea, but then knowing what you said, knowing that you can put this into 120,000 words, when did you feel like, okay, this is really
She
possible?
shook her head when you said the number.
When I'm like hearing it, I'm like, oh, like I need to like sit, like I'm seated, but I need to lie down when I hear this. It's just like triggering, traumatic. Oh my goodness, yeah, a visceral body reaction to that. Yeah, it's
Sorry, I'm sorry.
trying to enjoy my week. No, I'm just kidding. I had been looking to do a book, and I had met a really cool literary agent earlier that year. So the story came out in like June, July, I can't remember. And then I had met the agent in January of that year. And so he was like, keep in touch, like let me know if there's any stories that you think would be good for a book. And when it came out, it was just like on my mind, trying to find that idea. And I think that because the response I got was so positive, and people were like, wow, I had no idea about that, about Giannis. I just thought, perfect. It's the human story and it's sellable. It's like, as you know, Brian, like the thing with books is like, you have to have a good idea and it also has to sell. Like
Mhm.
publishers do not like it's just really this really tough combination. It's not once in a while there's a book that's a really good idea that's super unique that just takes off in ways publishers won't expect, like The Boys in the Boat, which was about like a rowing team in the 20s. But like most of the time it has to be on like some superstar. So I just really liked that it had, of course, that, but it had this human dimension, and that's what I try to center in my work.
Yeah, and you definitely can see that in what you've seen people talk about the book. I'm going to get through it next week, hopefully, and I really can't wait to delve in. But there was something I did today, right? Because Mirin, I pre-ordered this book a while ago. Of course, we were going to support you and get the book. But I pre-ordered the book, and then
I'm still
today,
waiting for mine though. Like
okay,
mine is not even here yet. What you be talking about? Look at
so
Mirror's
Amazon, get
yeah,
it
yo.
that made
together.
Mirin anxious. That
Yeah,
made
My
Mirin
yeah.
anxious.
God.
That's what it is. The other day I ordered some shit from Amazon and it came in like 3 different deliveries. That shit was annoying. But anyway, Dexter, you were
That's annoying.
saying.
But you need to Mirren's book. Amazon, please get that book to
Um,
Ryan as soon as
do
possible. But Mirren, I went back
I
because I
need
had
to tweet at Amazon on
I think
Brian's
Nah,
so.
behalf?
I
nah,
think
nah, nah.
so.
I look. I need it. Look, that's the only place my shit is at. So I need to be in their good graces for right now. Because I
Understood.
can't. I can't afford to get it at all these. Maybe we'll see when the second one comes out. Hopefully in 2022.
Oh
But yeah.
man. So Mirren, I hadn't been on Amazon in terms of looking at your book since I went to pre-order. And so I went back to the link today and it said Amazon bestseller. How does it feel to be an Amazon bestseller already a couple days after this is dropped?
And Mirin, I told you that was gonna happen. Like I told you that shit like maybe 2 weeks ago. I was like, it's gonna be a bestseller. You're like, oh my god, stop! I'm anxious. I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna
I'm like,
say,
yo,
what did I tell you?
That's a mirrored response for sure. For
but I
Come
sure.
on,
knew, but
imagine.
I knew, like I just knew. You know what I mean? Because I knew it was gonna like be something that resonated instantly. Because it's different.
Um, I am deeply uncomfortable right now. I, that's how I am. That's such a me response. I'm
It
like,
is.
I don't know. Um, I don't know. I think so. Like, Jeff Pearlman is like somebody that I'm pretty close to, and he said to me last night, like, did you know, like, check your ranking? And I was like, no, like, I don't check my ranking. And he's like, this is the cardinal sin. Of course, you should be checking your ranking. Everyone checks their ranking, but I don't check my ranking. I think like it's amazing that it's doing well, and I am just so thankful and grateful. But that to me is so much, more important that people are resonating with it and that they are liking it than like bestseller. I think for me, of course, I want to be a New York Times bestseller. That would be a dream come true, but I mean, it's not a long shot right now, but it's not something that I think will happen. I think it's a nice dream, but that's not important. I think it's just really cool that people are excited about reading, and it just makes me feel so happy that they would like spend their money on something I wrote. Like that's so cool.
See, I like you putting in perspective like that, Marin. And if I'm obviously haven't done what you and Brian have done yet. It will happen one day. I will be writing a book that is in the plans. But I would be like you, Marin. I'm not checking the numbers. I wouldn't do it.
Not
Like
checking the numbers.
I don't want to know. I don't need to be on top of it. I think I'm like you too. When I put out something, whether it's a sideline story, long form piece, I just want to see how it connects with people, and I'm fine with that.
Mhm.
Whatever comes after it, awards, whatever else, all good. But I get it. Colin Kaepernick.
Women's boxing.
Puerto Rico.
All right. So you wrote this book. What do you I think one of the things when you're writing a biography is you want people to find out some new things they didn't know, connect with this
Yeah.
person that you're writing about. What do you think it is that people would learn and connect with about Giannis that they might not have known before?
I mean, I think the whole childhood experience has been so unexplored. It was like, okay, he sold trinkets by the street, but I was like, okay, what streets? Where? How much did they make? What did they eat? I just think all of these things were unexplored, and so the book like really answers a lot of those questions. It definitely shed light on the racism that he experienced growing up, especially as a teen. At away games, they would shout really awful insults at him, and also just about like how hard it was being undocumented in this country that does not offer um, people of color born to migrants from other countries. Even if you're born in Greece, you don't get citizenship. So for Giannis, it was really, really hard and painful at times, and it just it made his rise all the more miraculous because he literally did not have the necessary paperwork to compete at the highest teams in his own country. He couldn't travel with a passport because he didn't have papers. So the whole thing is just luck. It's pure luck, and I think people also don't realize that like when he got his citizenship papers, it's only because it was clear he was going to go to the NBA. Like they would not have given him citizenship if he was just another black migrant. So I think people don't realize how much of a fiasco that was to get the papers. I mean, the whole agents and the team were going to the Nigerian embassy. There was a Spanish coach involved that was like, do I need to look into the Spanish government? So it was a big, big process with a lot of red tape. And finally, I think people will see a more vulnerable side of Giannis. I mean that in a good way, like emotionally intelligent. I think people realize he's so thoughtful and humble and wonderful. But I think this book really gives you a sense into like what shaped that kind of charismatic personality and sort of like where all that comes from.
It's gonna be interesting. Gary, gotta read
Yeah.
that. That's the things I'm really intrigued in learning about. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, that's something we talked about the other day in terms of like how he navigated the racial aspect of this. I want to know about the writing process. Like what was your routine? Because I have it right. See, I have an idea of what this could be like in terms of the very early mornings, the very late nights, just doing things at random times, putting away the phone, blocking off social media, blocking off, YouTube, Netflix, whatever the case may be. So like, what would be your typical routine if there even was one, during I guess the heavy writing portion of this?
Yeah, so I couldn't go to my normal coffee shops like normal, when I just said the word normal twice because I'm tired and I'm sorry. um I'm just doing fabulously in this interview.
You're
Um
doing great.
Thank you. Um I I would wake up super, super early, like 5 a.m., and start the interviews at like 6. And I would try to go like 6, 7, 8, 9, or if they were longer, like only do a couple in the morning. And then I would just have to like write here. And it was hard because normally I report the whole thing um, and then I write. But this, I had 20,000 words a month due from the publisher. So I had to do it at the same time, which was like really,
Mm.
really hard. So it's funny you talk about like little process things. I'm a baker. I don't know if I've told you that. I love
Huh.
baking. And I love it because, well, I just love it in general, but I also love it because it gets me out of my thinking brain and I can like work with my hands and stuff. So because I had this insane deadline every month and all of this time here, I would bake while I transcribed because like sometimes people just go on and on, and so you don't have to sit there like transcribing every little thing. And I would just like stir it, come back. Like I don't know if that I would just do so much baking and I would like leave presents for all my friends at their doorsteps because I couldn't see them. But it got me outside. But for the most part, it was just like being so relentless about my reporting and always making the extra call and just having, um, so much time to myself, and I also had a full-time job and then I changed jobs. So I had to also, it's not like I could just not do that. So I was reporting for that like in the afternoon. And then at night I would write all over again. And I would drink coffee at really weird hours, like at night. So I was just like not sleeping. It was tough.
I like that coffee is the constant for you.
I
There,
know.
there, Mirin. Coffee has to be the constant for you for sure. But
That
something
wait,
that,
real quick,
yes,
because you mentioned the deadlines, and I wanted to like add on to that real quick, because that's something that like with a publisher versus self-publishing is different. Like the deadlines that I would have would be like self-imposed, just psychotic
Right.
ones that we joked about like before before we actually started this podcast. So how was it just navigating through that as well? Because there were these rigorous deadlines at a month's time. You had a date also very early, like, and that's another thing working with a big publisher is like several months in advance it's like, all right, here's the release date, versus where I could basically pick my own date, for better or for worse. I'm not even saying which one is better, which one's worse, but I'm just trying to gauge like more the differences here.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough because if I had the luxury of reporting the whole thing and then writing it, I would have a sense like, okay, this is the overarching thing. This is what it's about. Then
Mm,
I'm gonna move this here. I'm gonna have that there. I'm gonna like know what to do because I know what I have. It's very hard to know where things go when you don't know what you have because you're not done getting it, if that makes sense. Like
yeah.
it was very hard to be like, okay, all of this stuff is going to go in this chapter because I don't know like how that connects to the rest of the book. So I just tried to like break it down chronologically. Um and I ended up rewriting a lot of it. So I would turn in this thing, but it would obviously change later. I think I rewrote this book like 4 times.
Mm,
Um and because it's hard, when I started the process, like there was so much I didn't know about him. And then when I was on chapter 14, I got all this new stuff that needed to be added into chapter 1, 2, and 3.
mm,
I got one of his best friends like super late in the game, like a month before deadline. So,
wow.
yeah, so it was just like it just created a pressure because I felt like, okay, if this is due, but it's not like going to be final, like why is it due? And I'm not complaining. I'm just like, it was hard for me to like conceptualize the whole thing because
Yep.
I could only focus on this like thing right now. And then like doing my normal job.
right.
So
Right, yeah.
yeah.
That's
I
well,
was
that's
I was
something else we wanted to get to actually. Go ahead, Dex.
No, I was glad you brought that up, Mirin, in terms of your process and when Brian had asked that, because I think some people may forget for a lot of authors and writers that we know, especially in the sports world, you're also working your normal job too. You're still pumping out feature stories. You're still managing all that, and that that's a challenge of itself. But I want to, especially because we have you and Brian here, and both you guys have released books this year. Brian has written fiction, and you do nonfiction with a biography. Would you ever think about doing fiction? Have you ever thought about doing fiction writing? What do you think are some of the differences? I know you haven't delved into it, but for both you guys, what do you think are some of the differences, or why you might ever want to dabble in the other?
I mean, I don't think I'm capable of writing fiction. Like, I don't, it's just like so hard. And there's no way I could write fiction. But I also don't, I
Why not?
don't want, it would be so bad. It would be so terrible.
Marin's like, I wouldn't even try it. No.
No,
I
I think
wouldn't read my own book. I would not read my own fiction
I think
book.
you're being too modest, and you need a
I'm
hype
being
man.
serious.
Like, I think you can do it. You obviously, first of all, you're one of the best writers pound for pound on the planet. One, two. I'm sure you have an imaginative side.
This
You know
is
what I
making
mean?
Marin so anxious.
Watching,
She's so
I know.
anxious about
I'm
this.
trying to get her. I'm trying to get her to turn red or pink. You know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna turn so red. I'm gonna be a tomato. Keep going. I'm gonna be red as Dex's wall.
You've watched TV,
Whoa.
movies. You know what I'm saying? You consume a lot of content. You have a different way of thinking. You could do
I'm
it.
with-
Look,
I'm
Mirin,
with-
let me tell you.
I'm with Marin on this.
Look,
No thanks.
I'm a psycho. So a lot of my ideas came from, well, one, just sort of being around and having always wanting to write fiction. But I was creating video game characters at like age 10, 11, 12 and writing little stories on their backgrounds and shit. Like I was doing that kind of stuff. So maybe I'm the weird one here, just trying to get you to join the dark side so I could just like
Look,
sort of, back off it a little bit.
You're not weird. I love fiction. I think most of what I read is fiction. I read like a book per week, and it's always fiction. I never.
Wow. You're the only
Who's the weird person here? Yes.
Not you, not the reader. People need to read more. You're not weird at all.
I agree. You're probably
Thanks,
you're probably the only guest that we've had that like has a bookshelf that I believe you've actually read every book that's behind you right now.
I just got a new bookshelf over there. It's just half cooking baking books and half regular books.
Nice.
So no, it's true. I love fiction books, but I can't see myself ever doing it. But I think the work that I do on a serious note is kind of a hybrid between fiction and nonfiction. And I don't mean in the sense that there's things that are untrue in my stuff. Please don't, nobody run with that, as the internet will do. But but I think that it's only because we're really good friends that this interview is the way it is. I use it's called creative nonfiction, and they put the word creative nonfiction because because it's lyrical like fiction, because it's got writerly devices like fiction. It's like it's supposed to be musical. It's supposed to like be descriptive. It's supposed to be descriptive. It's not like a really boring like academic treatise, so I think it's like that's why even though it's a biography, it's nonfiction. Same with all my work. It is technically called creative nonfiction, and I can use like that type of language and fun stuff.
So Mirin, when it comes to books, I'm sure people have asked you this throughout this whole process. What are the goals for the books? And I want to put out here what I would like to see as a goal for this book. All I want is very simple. It's very simple for me. I want Mirin to have a bigger bookshelf than the one she has behind her, so she can. So we just want to get more books that Mirin can read.
Manifest.
Yeah, see, you manifested. That's a good,
I
small,
love that.
doable goal, right? But I know for you, you have to, like you talked about this a bit before. You have to have liked how you're seeing people connect with the book on social media, sending you messages, pictures of the book. What you got to think more people are gonna even talk about this as they sit with it longer and we get closer to the next NBA season.
Oh yeah.
Have you thought about it? Have you added any other goals beyond that beside people just connecting it, or is that just it and you want it to just be there and people to have that connection?
I mean, first of all, it's like so surprising. People are like, "I finished." I was like, "Huh?" Like it came out like 24 hours ago. Like
400 pages.
Wasn't that good? No, I just
That means they couldn't put it down. They had to keep turning the pages. They had to, yeah.
Come on. But I would love, first of all, I would love to manifest your bookshelf thing. That just made me so happy. I have
There you go.
several bookshelves, and the thought of adding more just warms my nerdy heart. I your listeners are gonna be like, why did you have this girl on? She's the worst.
No.
I I want people to look at Giannis and see the full complexity of him. I think that his story is really just portrayed as this sugar-coated fairy tale, and it really glosses, because it is so inspiring and so amazing. I think people really gloss over the really difficult parts, and I should say the uncomfortable parts for some. And I hope people leave this with a nuanced, balanced perspective that it is entirely possible for him to love the country that did not always love him and that does not always love him. And both of these things are true. And life is not one or the other. It's totally true that he experienced tons of racism then and now. And he feels a connection to this place because so many people were also not racist to him. Like, I think, that's something I hope people take away. The second thing, I hope it starts a dialogue about, potentially what connections he can have with Nigeria. I think the common thread that I heard from a lot of Nigerian journalists I spoke to and just people involved is that, we want a deeper connection with Giannis. These are the Nigerian journalists I talked to. But, so much of his persona and his brand is Greek, the Greek freak. He plays for Greece as well. So I'm just curious, like, will it start any discussion about that? Lastly, I hope that, like, if you know nothing about basketball, you can still say, wow, I really enjoyed that book and I didn't have to know basketball to like it. And I hope that if you love basketball, you feel like there's a sufficient enough hoops, new information in there for you too. And then just selfishly, I hope this allows me to just continue writing books for the rest of my
There we
life.
go.
There we
There
go.
we go.
There we go.
That's
Some
what you want to.
ego.
That's what you want
You
to
know what I'm
hear.
saying?
We want to hear it. That's what you want to hear.
Manifestation.
Manifestation. I'm all about that.
I
Mary,
have some ideas, but like we'll keep that.
we'll talk about.
We'll keep that off air.
Except Brian, when Mirin came on the NBA Exchange, I asked Mirin about what was next and what she had next for the book. And so, Mirin, I've done some thinking. In the last few days since the book has dropped, and I think, yes, I'm glad. Thank you, Greg, for putting the camera on for me for this. I think that Mirin should be the person to write the Ain't Hard to Tell biography, the story of a podcast of a great guy like myself working with a jerk like Brian and surviving through these times and these rough interviews and all these things we have to do. Come on, Mirin. You should be the person to write and tell this story. It's Mirin Fader, Amazon bestseller, writing the story. That's the person who should do it. What do you say, Mirin? Can we sign you up? Can we sign you up here on the A Hard Tell podcast for this?
I have to compliment you on your smooth delivery. I thought you were about to give me some like really good idea. Like let me take notes.
Are you saying this is a bad idea? Oh man, damn! The silence, folks. That's everything. That's everything you need to know. I feel like when I'm in LA and I want to join Mirin in a cafe for a latte, it's not going to happen anymore. So that's your idea suck.
I hate you.
Okay, so I mean, I should be the one mad here. You're not going to write the Ain't Hard to Tell biography. It's okay. It's all right. We're
I
good.
asked you to send me a latte picture, and what did you do?
I did not.
You did not. You did not send me a latte picture. Brian, did he send me a latte picture?
Brian, we can't hear you. I think your mic.
No, he said no. There are no words to describe.
He said
absolutely not. No picture was sent.
I said I don't even really drink lattes, so I'm not sure if I'm a part of this.
So basically, what Mirin is saying here before we let her get out, because she's got to run. Mirin is saying because I did not deliver on the fact of sending her a latte picture, she will not deliver on even possibly thinking about writing the story of the Ain't Hard to Tell podcast. All right.
What can I say?
What can you say?
I also want to point out. Since you brought up the Giannis racial thing, we both wrote books about race, guys. I just want to point out yet another parallel.
Your book one more time so people can know what it is and where.
Are you being sarcastic?
No.
She's being serious.
No.
Why would
I'm
she not
asking
be
you to
serious?
plug your book.
We're
Right.
cool, so I'm just saying if you're being sarcastic,
Brian,
you know what I mean? Like,
show the
Brian,
people I'm talking
show
about.
the
Hidalgo
people.
Heights, victims are taking up space. If you're interested in a conversation about race and complexities, Latino experience, and there's a Black Latino here. Wait, on this side, here we go. And that's important because there are some other depictions of us that don't necessarily cover all sides. Then yeah, you can get that on Amazon now. It's only $20, and still.
Get
I
that
can't,
book,
I
Hidalgo
can't believe you
Heights.
thought I was sarcastic. I'm
Hey,
still
I'm just.
Yeah.
taking
It's
that
cool.
in.
Like, it's cool.
No,
I
Taking,
also want to. I also want to point out. I also want to point out that 400 pages. I see. I only got up to like. I got up to 300, and then I was like, let me chop this down a little bit. I'm at 268. You know what I mean? So
you
it's
gotta
a little.
level up like Mirin, Brian. You gotta level
Oh,
up
part
like
two.
Mirin.
See, part two. I was trying to keep it tighter, but I'm working on the second book right now, and that one might be longer than part one.
Well,
So
wow.
I want to
Mir-
have
Mi-
part two out next year, but some things are holding me back from that right now. So we might have to make adjustments on how the work life balance goes moving forward.
Mirin, we
Did I
Work-life
know.
say that
balance?
out
What's
loud?
that? What's
Did I say
that?
that?
What's
Work-life
that?
balance? Okay, sorry, Dex. Oh,
No,
sorry. I
no,
was just
Mirin is
compelled.
like, what is that work life balance? I was writing a
I was
book
like, did
and
I
working at the
hear
same
you
time.
correctly? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you heard him correctly. Well, Mirin, we know, we know you're taking ideas, so I'm going to try to come back with a better idea than the A
Yes,
Heart Cell
please.
podcast story because
I
you were
have
not
one
feeling
already. I'm
that.
gonna text it to
So,
you, and you've probably already thought of it, but still,
what-
it's
so,
Okay.
so we'll see about that. But right now, I had to hold it up because I had the book behind me.
Oh,
This is the
There
book.
we
I
go.
have a copy. This is an Amazon best-selling author. See at the top it says Mirin Fader for people who are watching this podcast. Giannis, The Improbable Rise of NBA MVP is out now for everybody to get. Please go support Mirin Fader. She's a fantastic writer. I haven't read this book but I know it's going to be fantastic. And I'll be texting Mirin next week about it.
no.
And somehow, some way, the next time Mirin comes back on the podcast, she'll either let us know about a better idea or maybe she will come around and write the story of the Ain't Hard to Sell podcast. Maybe she will. Mirin, thank you. We are honored to have you here to join us once again. And we are thrilled for your success. We are rooting for you, and we know you're
For
going to
sure.
go on to continue to write many more books and great things. So thank you so much for joining me. And
Oh,
I owe you several pictures of lattes and cafes.
and just a latte. But yes, thank you so much, you guys. So much
Thanks.
love to you, my friends.
Appreciate you, Mirin. Thank you. Be well, okay?
Thank you.